Today on Kellen's Petty Talk Show, I'm pleased to have legendary director Gary Sherman. You may have seen some of his films, including Dead and Buried, Vice Squad, Poltergeist 3, Lisa, and Wanted Dead or Alive. As always, this episode is sponsored by Pie Bake Shop. Delicious pies crafted in the heart of Los Angeles and delivered fresh to your door. Just call 818-986-1441. That's 818-986-1441. Or follow them on Instagram at Pie Bake Shop. That's P-I Bake Shop. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
We're doing great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for being here.
Well, my pleasure. Something to do during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just bored every single day.
Yeah, so we're just trying to make use of the time.
What have you been doing during the pandemic?
Not as much as I'd like to be doing. I actually had just started working on a script before the pandemic
Oh, cool.
began, and it was the first spec script I've done in a long time, and it was one that was sitting in my head, and I just decided to do it.
Oh, that's great.
And I've written about 4 pages over the 8 weeks.
Oh, okay, so it's coming along slowly.
Yeah, every time I sit down at the computer, I just start thinking about other things,
Yeah.
and then actually a couple of paying jobs came up, so that kind of shifted
There
my
you go.
thing.
What do you use to
I'm
write
like
your
a
scripts?
what program?
Yeah.
I use Scriptor,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
the old program which Wright brothers that
hmm
I really like that program.
Yeah,
So
I've heard
I've
good things
used it.
about that one.
Yeah, I've used it for God since I've been writing on a computer basically, and they keep
Wow.
upgrading it every year, and it's yeah, script writer I think is now the official name of it,
Oh, okay.
and it's a really great program.
I use Final
So
Draft. I won like some version of it at a film festival a couple of years back, and it hasn't expired since, so I'm still using that.
Yeah, me and some friends
uh,
have been using Celtics, and even when I was doing script writing in college, that was one that we were using. It's pretty good. It's not bad, but
It's
I don't
very
know.
basic stuff.
I've tried Final Draft, and I like script writer a lot more.
Yeah, no, I can
It's just
figure.
more user friendly.
Oh, is
Um,
it?
you know, and as someone who's written a lot of scripts, a lot of
hmm
the things that I like to do with a script, they that happens in scriptwriter, which doesn't happen in final draft.
Yeah.
So,
so let's start with your one movie, Dead and Buried. How was Robert Englund casted in the movie?
oh, I knew Robert before we did Dead and Buried. I'd actually worked with him. Um, I had just finished a big event for NBC that I had cast Robert in. Um, in the big events for NBC at that time in the 80s, um, the casting was all done from people who were in television series, and I had met Robert at a couple of casting sessions, and boom, boom, and I just thought he was amazing, and I really pushed the network to allow me to cast somebody in the film who was not currently in a television series. And I read him in front of them, and they just loved him. And so we worked together on this big television movie, and then I was offered Dead and Buried, and I said to him, "You want to come do a movie with me?" And he said, "Yeah, that would be great." So
That
um,
sounds like
I actually wrote the part when Ron Shusett and I were doing the rewrite on the script on Dead and Buried. We wrote that part of the tow truck driver for Robert, with Robert in mind.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, Robert and I are still really good friends, and he calls me one of his great pre-Freddy friends.
No,
So I
he's
was
really good in
friends
the
with
film.
Robert before he was Freddy.
Yeah, no, for sure. His
no,
his whole life kind of blew up those next couple of years later.
dude, he's amazing. He still is to this day. One thing I like about him is his enthusiasm. You know,
Oh,
Yeah,
he's fantastic. And my daughter and her husband only live a couple of miles from Robert and Nancy, so I get to see him quite a bit when I'm down when I go back to California to visit my daughter.
oh, that's cool. Where does your daughter live? Like in LA area or?
Laguna Beach.
Oh, nice. I was just there actually the other day surfing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I went surfing for the very first time during all this because they opened just Laguna and San Clemente. It was kind of
So
cool.
what's it like surfing with a mask on?
Well, surprisingly, you don't have to do that. But honestly, that was the first time I went this year, and I actually screwed up my ear really bad, and I'm still kind of dealing with it.
Oh, sorry about that.
But yeah, now I'll be fine. So that whole opening scene in Dead and Buried is pretty amazing, and it's very effective, especially the shovel hitting the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just love that.
Yeah, we
Um,
had fun. And I mean, you just get that kind of, music that, Joe Renzetti is just such a brilliant composer.
oh,
And
for sure.
and setting that weird mood at the beginning and you think, what the hell are we watching? And this really
Hmm.
light scene and then all of a sudden the shovel.
So Jack Albertson played the coroner. Dead and Buried was one of his final roles. How was he to work with?
It was his final role.
Oh, it was
Um,
his final role. Okay.
yeah, he died while we were still in post production.
Oh,
He
wow.
we had actually he died the day after we finished his ADR,
No way.
um,
Oh, God.
and
That's
Jack
horrible.
was Jack was one of the most fantastic people. He as open and good as the parts that he played, that's what he was like as a human being. He was
Wow.
just absolutely wonderful. And we knew when we cast Jack to do this that he was dying. I mean,
Yeah.
he had cancer, and we
Oh.
knew that. And it was a problem with insuring him and everything else. But we just decided
Hmm.
we wanted to do it, and I was just so thrilled and honored to be able to work with him. It really meant a lot to me to be able to do that,
Hmm.
and he was just unbelievable. He's such a gentleman. I mean, we had some problems because of his illness. When we would be doing uh, on camera, he was just boom, showtime, and
Yeah.
he'd just get himself up. But when we were doing reverses and he was, excuse me, doing his off camera, um, he would fall asleep sometimes
Oh, really?
Man.
from all the medications he was taking. And
Yeah.
there was one time we were doing uh, uh, James Jimmy Ferrantino was sitting on Dobbs's desk, and we were shooting over Dobbs back to Jimmy and doing the scene. And we'd always shoot Jack's side first while he had the energy. So now we came around and we're shooting Jimmy's side, and Jimmy's doing his lines to Jack, and suddenly Jimmy's eyes teared up, and this look came over his face that was just devastating. And he jumped up and ran off the set. And what had happened was Jack had fallen asleep, and Jimmy had just lost his father.
Mm.
And Jimmy was in the hospital with his dad when his dad passed. And Jimmy
Jeez.
was in the middle of a conversation with his dad when his dad died. And this felt exactly the same way uh, that what had happened with his dad, and he just like freaked out and ran and locked himself in his trailer.
Jeez.
And but we got him back,
Yeah, for sure.
and but it was pretty devastating for him. And Jimmy really loved Jack, and so it
Yeah.
was hard. I had dinner. Here's one of the things that's really one of the worst things about being in this business
Hmm.
and having half of your friends house being household names is
Yeah.
that if anything happens to them, you hear about it on the radio or on television
Oh, it's the
or in the
worst.
newspaper. And we had been in ADR with Jack, and then his wife came and met him, and we all went out to dinner.
Uh-huh.
And we went out to dinner. We had a really nice time. It was early, we went to an early dinner. She took him home. I went home. I got up the next morning, turned on the news, and the first thing I heard was actor Jack Albertson passed away this morning at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And
Wow.
wait a minute, I just had dinner with him last night. Well, as it happened, they got home. He wasn't feeling well. His wife took him to the hospital, and he passed during the night.
Wow.
And it was, it's
That's
happened to
tough.
me so many times now, I can't even count it.
No, I know. Wow. Well, at the end of the day, he did an amazing job in the film, despite all that. And it's a pretty strong final role for him, I would
Do you
say.
know what his first role was?
I don't. His first ever
Um,
role.
Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, really?
Really?
He's the
What?
guy at the post office that opens the letter and says, "Hey, look at this. It's a letter to Santa Claus. Maybe we should send it to the courthouse."
Really? Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's like my mom's favorite movie.
that's Jack's first role on camera.
Wow. He was one of the very first actors I kind of fell in love with because when I was in kindergarten, we did a play of Willy Wonka,
All
and
right.
that was like the first thing I ever acted in. And so yeah, they made us watch the film, and we would just keep rewatching it. And yeah, he's just such a lovable character, not only in that movie, but in pretty much every movie he does.
Poseidon Adventure as well. He did amazing in that.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was amazing. It was my friend Mel Stewart, who's also gone, unfortunately, who did Willy Wonka
Hmm.
with Jack.
That whole reconstruction scene that he does on the girl that gets attacked by the town chills me to the absolute core. It makes you wonder how much work a coroner does in the average dead person to prepare them for like funeral services.
Not as much as as Dobbs did.
Yeah, exactly.
But usually when people are that badly mutilated, they usually don't do any reconstruction on them. But
Yeah.
those are Stan Winston's hands
Are they really?
in that. Yeah, yeah, because Stan was actually doing. We had the camera set, and Stan was actually doing the sculpting right there on the set.
Oh
He
wow.
sculpted that face on the set. Stan was just.
He's amazing.
That
I was
guy
so
had
lucky on my movies, the people I've gotten to work with. That was Stan's first major motion picture too, Dead and Buried. So,
Oh wow.
um, it was both. It was Stan's first picture. It was Robert's first. Um, and
Launched a lot of careers then, if you look at it
definitely.
that way.
yep, yep. And Lisa Blount, who
Hmm.
went on to do Officer and a Gentleman,
Yep.
and then she became a director and a producer, and actually won an Oscar for a documentary that she did.
Oh wow.
So, and in Dead and Buried, you get to see her tits.
And that's always a bonus. And the deaths in the film are still very really damn effective. I mean, to this day. I mean, I just rewatched the film the other day. The deaths are really effective.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was what the whole thing was about. Was
Yeah.
you know, it was Dobbs' puppet show. I mean, the whole movie was Dobbs entertaining himself. So
Mhm.
he wanted to see the most gruesome deaths that he could see, and that's what he
Mhm.
got to see. It was all his little puppet show. It was a fun movie to make. I mean, just the thought of the when we got into the film that nobody in the film was alive except Dobbs.
Yep.
and then the couple with the little kid when they come into town, and then of course the people. You know, one of the things that I really hate about the final film is that, if you guys have listened to the audio track on the Blu-ray, on the Blue Underground Blu-ray, or even the Blue Underground DVD, the double set, my commentary, I talk about the problems that we had in the film, and the production company changed 3 times while we were making the picture.
Wow.
We started out with one production company. That production company got bought by another production company. So we did pre-production with one production company. We did production with another. And we did most of post-production with that second company. And then a third company bought the second company. And they made me change lots of stuff in the film, which I was rather upset about. Although I fought like a banshee, and basically their changes maybe did a 10% change, so 90% of the film is still the film I wanted to make.
Well, that's
but
good
one
then.
of the things was they wanted another death in the film, and so I got pushed and pushed and pushed, and finally said, well, and somebody came up with the idea of killing the doctor when he's testing the doctor was already dead. I mean, that was... So we had to restructure a whole bunch of stuff in the film in order to do that scene, and I hate that scene. If that scene was just cut out of the film, I would be more than happy. The acid in the nose. And Stan Winston wasn't available, nor did he want to do it, the acid in the nose stuff. So they brought in another special effects person to just
finish it off.
To just do that, and so I hate that scene.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. Nobody likes changing anything.
No.
Especially when it's not your idea to do so. We love the film regardless. That's absolutely one of your best, we'd say.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I have my 3 favorites.
Yeah, what are your 3 favorites? I'd love to know.
Well, Deathline, which of course is my firstborn.
Classic.
And I love that movie. And I mean, Deathline was made in 1972.
Yeah.
And it has never not been on a screen since it was first made.
Wow.
It has never gone away. And, now with the new Blu-ray, which we did a scan from the original camera negative.
Yeah.
Which is very rare to do. The BFI, the British Film Institute, helped us find the cut negative, and we did the scan from the cut negative. That new Blu-ray from Blue Underground is just really incredible.
Yeah. I still gotta grab that
Have
one.
you seen it?
I've seen Deathline, yeah. Like once.
But have you seen the new Blu-ray?
I've seen I haven't watched the Blu-ray, but I know about it. I gotta buy it still.
Yeah, you have to watch it.
Blue Underground does a good job on their Blu-rays.
I'll send you one and I'll sign it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
What was Donald Pleasence like?
Donald Pleasence. I mean, you ask about 2 of my favorite people so far that I've ever worked with.
Yep.
Donald Pleasence was just the best. I mean, when Carrie Jones and I wrote the script, we wrote it with Donald in mind, and everybody said to us, Donald Pleasence will never do this movie. I mean, in 1972 was before he ever did, any kind of exploitation or horror stuff. He was the actor's actor. He had won every award that there was to win. He was on Broadway at the time doing Man in the Glass Booth that he won a Tony for.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just amazing, and but everybody told us that he wanted to do a comedy. And when we wrote the part of Inspector Cahoon, we wrote it strictly for comedy.
Yeah.
And so Jay Cantor, who at one time was the biggest agent in Hollywood, was the executive producer of this movie, and everybody knew him. he had been president of Universal International right before, and then left there with Alan Ladd Jr. to open their own production company, and Deathline was one of their first movies. So, anyways, people took anything Jay said very seriously. So Jay said, they're never going to look at this, but I'll send it to them. And Jay sent the script to Donald's agent. And so they took the offer very seriously. They sent the script to Donald. But all we didn't send the whole script. We sent Inspector Cahoon's scenes.
Yeah.
Donald reads it and says, I love this character. I want to do it. He's in New York doing Man in the Glass Booth. I fly to New York from London and have dinner with him, and we talk about it. And then I told him about the rest. He said, I don't care about the rest of the movie. I only care about the scenes I'm in. So
it's so funny.
So anyways, he agreed to do it.
I love how obsessed he is with tea in that movie.
he just got so into that. Have you read Sean Hogan did a monograph about Deathline? It's available on Amazon if you.
I haven't. I'll have to check that out. That sounds
and
cool.
It is so brilliant. What Sean did was he wrote a diary, Inspector Cahoon's diary. And it's Inspector Cahoon writing about investigating this case.
Really?
And it is so brilliant. Sean just got Donald's voice like you can't believe. I mean, I love the Brits, and they're just so clever. And Sean is a great writer and a great critic, and he wrote this book that is unbelievable. But it's Sean Hogan, and just look it up on
Amazon.
I can probably get you a copy of that too.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's fairly expensive, but
worth
having.
Yeah.
But anyhow, where was I? Oh, so we were just talking about Donald, working with Donald. Donald is a practical joker beyond practical jokers, and he drove me crazy. There's that fireplace behind his desk.
Yeah.
Every time he'd get up from there, he'd like do, oh, like he bumped his head. And I'd say, Donald, are you okay? He said, of course I'm okay. I'm an actor. And he would do this to me over and over and over again. And finally, one day he gets up and really bangs his head on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought he did. And I go, forget it, man. You're not getting me again. He said, forget it. He said, you don't care about me. You don't care. I really banged myself this time. I said, no, I'm not buying it. And he goes, and suddenly there's blood running out from between his fingers.
Ooh, what?
And I go,
like a blood capsule?
Yeah. Oh, but he got me. I went, oh my God, you're bleeding. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm an actor. And he shows me. And I mean, but literally, you mentioned tea.
Yeah.
When Donald wasn't on camera, he was running around getting tea for everybody.
Okay,
I mean,
so that's a real thing.
he just was one of the guys. He just wanted to, he was so kind to everybody. And I'll tell you what a great actor he was. One day we're wrapping the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes up to me and he says, I'm not on the call sheet tomorrow. I said, no, you're not shooting tomorrow. You got a day off. He said, but I'm looking at what's being shot. And he says, Dr. Bacon is doing the scene on the other side of the telephone call from when we talk about the lab results. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, who's going to do his off camera? And I said, well, I'll do his off camera or somebody. He says, no. He was there when I did mine. He was there for me, and I want to be there for him. And he says, you don't have to pay me or nothing. Just send a car, pick me up, bring me in. I'll do the off screen, and I'll go back home again. he said, but I owe that to my fellow actors to do that.
See, that's a quality actor right there.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was just
Sounds like he kept the set real light for you guys too.
he was great. The first couple of days were a little. He and Norman Rossington, the two of them, just decided they had to test this young upstart. I mean, I was like 24 years old, and
Yep, that's
my
how old I
first
am right
movie. Yeah.
now.
Well, that's how old I was when I did Deathline, and he really put it to me, and I guess I passed the test because by the end of the second day we were just flying.
Wow.
And I mean, just imagine. Okay, you're 24. Could you imagine walking onto a set on your first movie, the first day,
No.
first movie, and there you have Donald Pleasence and Norman Rossington
Absolutely
staring at you and saying, "What do you want to do, boss?"
No.
and I mean, and they were just sitting there like, with their arms crossed and going,
Yeah.
"Okay, tell us what to do." And I mean, between the two of them, they'd probably been in more movies than I had seen in my entire life. And,
yeah, probably.
I mean, Norm Rossington, I mean, first of all, he was the Beatles manager in A Hard Day's Night. I mean, just start there. So, he'd work with Dick Lester. And I mean, between the two of them, and I mean, all the Harold Pinter plays that Donald had done and his friendship with Harold Pinter. And here I am facing off to these two guys who have worked with, and of course, the fact that Donald had worked with Roman Polanski, who is to me God.
Yeah.
I mean, Roman is my God. There's no question. And as a matter of fact, when I was in pre-production on Deathline, I had one of the greatest thrills of my entire life. I go out. I think it was either Pinewood or Shepperton. I don't remember which studio it was, but Jeffrey Foote, who was going to be my editor on Deathline, was out at the studio cutting a movie, and I believe he was cutting Man in the Wilderness with John Huston. And so he said, "Why don't you come out and have lunch at the studio and we can talk about the movie?" So I said, "Great." So I went out there. I get to the lunch room at the studio, and he's sitting there with Alistair McIntyre, who is another great British film editor, a legendary film editor. And so he introduces me to Alistair, and I was really kind of blown away. And I said to Alistair, what are you working on?" And he says, "Oh, I'm doing Macbeth." And I look at him and I said, "With Roman Polanski?" And he says, "Is there another Macbeth shooting at the moment?" And I said, "Oh my God, you're working with Roman Polanski." And he says, "Yeah, and he's going to be here in about 5 minutes to meet me for lunch."
Oh, wow.
And so anyways, in walks Roman Polanski. And I'm just,
what?
My chin is dropped to my chest. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm just like, I mean, here I am, this little snot-nosed kid.
Yeah.
And there's Roman Polanski. And
oh, that's insane.
So Alistair says, Jeff was watching me, and Alistair says, "Okay, we're going to go have lunch." And Jeff says to Alistair, "No, why don't you guys join us? The four of us can have lunch together." And I'm going, and I got to sit there for an hour and a half talking to Roman Polanski. And talking about Donald and working with Donald, because Roman had worked with Donald several times. And it was pretty amazing. It was really, really amazing. And, boom. So I met Roman several more times in my life. And
how was he as a person?
He's amazing. I mean, I'm so sorry what happened to him, and I truly believe he got set up,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was a blackmail attempt that went haywire,
Mm-hmm.
and but anyhow, I'm sorry that we lost him to the United States.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyways, he's a great. I mean, Rosemary's Baby is number one on my list. If anybody has me do a top 10, it's
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the greatest films that was ever made. Uh, right up there with the Hitchcock films that I'll put up there on my top 10. But
What's your favorite Hitchcock?
Psycho.
Psycho. Yeah.
Psycho. I don't even have to think about that one. I
Yeah.
mean, I love a lot of the early Hitchcock stuff. Um,
Uh-huh. I'm a big fan
yeah,
of
I mean,
Vertigo.
Vertigo's great. North by Northwest is great. Rope
Yeah.
is great. Talking about Hitchcock in general, and Hitchcock's been a big influence on me. Hitchcock shot his movies before he shot his movies. His movies were shot before he ever walked on the set. He storyboarded everything.
Yeah.
Every shot was story, and I do the same thing. I
Uh-huh.
learned from him. I studied what he did, and
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing. I don't make my decisions. By the time I get to the set, the only thing I have to do is direct my actors
Yeah.
and work with the actors because my DP knows exactly what shots I want because
Mm-hmm.
everything's been storyboarded. And so my whole crew knows, my first AD knows exactly what I'm going to shoot every day and exactly how many setups there's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And all my only responsibility on that set is to check the camera angles, to make sure the visuals are what I want them to be. But everybody's had their instructions in advance and to work with actors
Mm-hmm.
and to get performances. And that's what I love to do.
We were gonna actually go into your one film, Wanted Dead or Alive. How did casting Gene Simmons happen as the character of Malak Al Rahim?
Okay, we're Wanted Dead or Alive was really Bob Ramey called me, and Bob at that time was president of the studio that was doing the picture, and he said, "I have a problem and I need your help." And I said, "What's that?" Because I mean, Bob had been the president of Avco Embassy when we did Vice Squad, and he was amazing. Um, and president of the studio when we did Dead and Buried, and he was the person who really tried to protect me from the changes they wanted made in the movie. And I'm sure you've all seen Bob Ramey because he was president of the Academy for a long time, and he's the guy that came out and did the reading of the rules of the Oscar voting. And uh, so anyway, Bob calls me and says, "I I have a problem." He said, "We have a script called Wanted Dead or Alive. We bought the rights to the title Wanted Dead or Alive, and we had a script done, and the script is horrendous.
Oh.
It's horrendous, and we've already sold the film based on the title, so we've got a release date. We don't have a script. We don't have a movie, and I need you to. And we're facing a director's strike. There was a director's strike pending, which never happened, but it was pending. The DGA was negotiating a new contract that wasn't going well. So he said, "We need to start shooting almost immediately, and we don't have a script. Can you come in?" So I went in. Basically, Bob sat me down in an office, gave me the script, and asked me to read the script right there. I read the script. He says, "Can you fix it?" I said, "No."
Oh, jeez.
I said, "This script is beyond fixing. The only
Oh
thing we could do
God.
is throw this script away and start from scratch." And he said, "Okay, but We need this. You got 2 weeks.
Oh no.
I got 2 weeks. And Denise Denovi, who went on to, produce Batman
Yeah.
later, but Denise at that time was his assistant. And Denise says to me, "Hey, Gary, do you want a co-writer?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." She said, "I just work with a writer who's absolutely unbelievable, and I think you guys would get on like crazy." And that was Brian Taggart, who, Brian and I went on to write a lot of movies together. But that's how we met. And uh, so Denise put us together. I went out. I went and met Brian for dinner that night. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about it. We decided to do it. They made a deal with Brian in the morning, and Brian and I got together and started working literally 24/7. They set us up in an office with Arthur Sarkisian, who was the producer,
Uh-huh.
and we just started writing. And we literally worked for a little less than 2 weeks, day and night. We had an assistant typing for us on a computer. It was the first time I ever did a script on a computer. It was an old IBM Model 50, which had 50 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Was this a good experience or a bad experience?
It was a great experience. I've been married to computers ever since then.
Yeah.
And I've always been I love technology.
Oh, me too.
And so anyhow, we just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and
Jeez.
gave the script over to Bob, and he went, "Let's go," and we started pre-production, and there we went. I mean, I to this day I wish we'd had a normal time to write the script, because I think I really like Wanted Dead or Alive, but I think the script is bland.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the script that I would have written had I had a couple of months to write it, even instead of a couple of weeks.
It's never good to be forced to
No.
like finish something fast.
Yeah, but it's still an entertaining movie, and years later, it's appreciated heavily. You know.
Yeah, it's and working with Rutger was just unbelievable. It was great. Okay, now how Gene got involved
Yeah, I want to
is,
hear this.
pre-production was, writing was like this, and pre-production was like this, instead of like, instead of big. We had no time. We had to start shooting. From the time we finished the script, I think we had 4 weeks or 5 weeks to get ready to start shooting. And and then John Alcott was supposed to shoot the movie for me, because we had just done, Vice Squad together. And Johnny was sick, and his wife Sue called me and said, uh, "Gary, can you let Johnny out of this one? I really don't want him working. He really needs to rest." And and I went, "Yeah, I guess so." And I mean, because they were friends, and that's how I met Alex Nepomniachtchi. So now I'm working with a new DP who I've never worked with, and I got all kinds
Wow.
of stuff going on, and we're trying to get everything going,
That's a lot to deal with.
and we're casting like crazy, and
Yeah.
ended up with Rutger, uh, who was not my first choice, but
No.
I love the fact that I had him.
Who was the
Uh,
first choice before Rutger?
Mel Gibson.
Oh wow.
Ooh.
Mel was wanted to do it too. The problem came down to money,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and
it.
Mel really didn't have a presence yet. He'd only done Mad Max
Mm-hmm.
and Road Warrior were his only two movies at that time, and I just loved him in Road Warrior. I had just seen it; it wasn't even released yet, really.
Wow.
And uh, he was in America, and he had a new agent, and everything was going on, and everybody was all excited about him. And I got him the script, and he loved the script, and he wanted to do it, but he wanted $1 million, which at that time was like, well, Rutger wanted $1 million too, but Rutger was willing to take $500,000 cash and $500,000 deferred.
Okay, so that's helpful.
Mel's agents were not willing to do that, so I ended up with Rutger.
Yeah.
It would have been a different movie with Mel Gibson. I think as great an actor as Rutger is, it didn't help the box office.
So you think if Mel was in it, it would have been a lot bigger?
If Mel was in it, it would have been a blockbuster.
Wow.
Without question.
How is Gene as a person? Because I've heard some horror stories.
Okay, here we go. So I'm sorry, I keep going off into tangents.
No, you're fine.
It's okay.
I'm loving all your stories.
A lot of editing to do.
No, this is great. This is gold.
So anyhow, like I'm under real pressure. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. We're in the studio 20 hours a day trying to get all the pre-production done, all the casting done. My assistant comes in and says, Gary, there's Gene Simmons is on the telephone for you. And I said, what? Gene Simmons? Yeah, from Kiss. I said, yeah, I know who Gene Simmons is. What does Gene Simmons want? And he said, he wants to read for a part in the movie. I said, oh, fuck. Forget about it. I mean,
how did he even hear about it?
I'll call him back. His agent sent him the script. The script had been sent out to all the agencies. And so anyways, an hour later, she comes walking in again. She said, he's calling back. He wants to talk to you. And I said, I'll call him back. 2 hours later, I'm sitting in a meeting with Arthur Sarkisian, and Judy comes in again and says to me, Gary, Gene Simmons is on the phone again. And
oh my God.
Arthur says, what does Gene Simmons want? And I said, he wants a part in the movie. And Arthur says, that might be good, I said, that's all I need is some drugged out rock and roller in the middle of this kind of craziness that's going on. And Arthur says, you know what, just talk to him. Even if you don't give him a part, maybe we can get him to write some music for the movie. So I said, okay. So I take the call and I'm blown away. There's this voice on the other end of the phone that says, Mr. Sherman, this is Mr. Gene Simmons, and I would truly like to speak to you about doing a part in your movie. He said, I could be very helpful to you. He said, I speak fluent Arabic, 3 or 4 dialects, and I speak fluent Hebrew. And the part that I want to play, which is Malach al-Rahim, speaks all those languages. And I could not only speak them well for you, but I could help you translate and do everything else with all the other characters who have to speak Arabic or Hebrew.
So you were sold there.
I'm going, well, I said, where are you? Let's meet. So he said, well, I'm in Detroit, about to do a concert. But I have my own plane, so I could fly in, meet you tomorrow for lunch, and then fly back and be back here for my concert. I said, that's up to you. I'm not promising anything. Well, anyways, he flew in. We went out to lunch. He just blew me away. Because if there's anything that Gene isn't, is a drugged out rock and roller. I mean, he doesn't even drink alcohol. He's never had a drug in his entire life. He doesn't take aspirin.
Oh, geez.
Gene is just, he's Mr. Clean except with his dick. I mean, he can't.
He breathes fire.
Yeah, and I mean, if his dick doesn't get wet twice a day, he thinks he's going to die.
Oh no!
And money is his life.
Yeah, he probably comes down to the project. I can make us a lot of money. Just cast me.
Yeah, that's all. It's money's everything in the world to Gene. That's all he thinks about is money. Yeah. So,
Did he ask
But
for $1 million?
no, he said he didn't even care what he made on the movie. He wanted to do the part because
Okay.
he thought this will make him a movie star.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, we ended up going with it, and it was he was fantastic, and he was so intimidated by Rutger. He just would like sit there and watch Rutger work because I mean Rutger is was one of the world's brilliant actors.
Oh, for sure.
And, so Gene learned a lot from Rutger, and he really appreciated getting to do the work.
What's your most fond memory of Rutger?
You know what? As a matter of fact, I was just talking about Rutger yesterday. Somebody called me to just talk about Rutger. I have a bunch of fond memories of Rutger because he and I got on like crazy, and we both cook, so we used to cook a lot together. And and then he was best friends with Whoopi Goldberg while we were doing the movie. He and Whoopi met and became buddies, and Whoopi was on the set a lot.
Really?
And yeah, it was quite fun. But anyways, um, okay, I'll tell you the funny story rather than the serious story because I think that's what you want. When we were when we were shooting the end sequence, which was supposed to be a chemical plant, we actually shot it at a power plant in Seal Beach. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys are familiar with that big power plant. There's four giant towers that are coal powered steam generators that basically
Mhm.
create the electricity from every place from Long Beach down to San Diego.
Yeah, it's like
And
right off the 405,
Is
right?
it off the
right,
405?
right, you can see
Yeah.
it from the 405. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I might know what you're talking about.
Anyhow, we went there and made a deal with the power company to shoot. And why there's four towers is three towers are always operating, and the fourth tower is under maintenance, and so it's not operating. So we looked at their schedule and made it work so that we could shoot in the tower. We needed a week to shoot in the tower, and so the towers are down for like 3 weeks when they're under maintenance. So that would give us a week to prep it and a week to shoot it, and then the last week to get all of our stuff out of there before the tower had to go back online. Because
Hmm.
when the towers are online, the noise is unbelievable.
Hmm.
I mean, you have to stand this close, like an inch away from somebody and shout in their ear in order to be heard.
Hmm.
So uh, there was no way that you could shoot in a tower that was operating. So it took about a week to prep everything, to hang the lights, as I said, I had everything storyboarded, so we knew exactly where every shot was. So we pre-lit everything in the tower. We set all the charges and everything for the special effects for the guns and the gunfire and the ricochets um, and the explosion with the hand grenade and all of that stuff. So, and then we're supposed to start shooting. The day before we're supposed to start shooting, one of the other towers went down.
Jeez.
And they had to put the tower that we had prepped online.
Oh, no.
So we're going, what do we do? I mean, we couldn't figure out what the hell, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Anyway, bottom line is that we had no choice. I won't go through all the details, but we had no choice, but we had to shoot in an active tower with that noise.
Ooh.
So the sound guys rigged up like multiple radio mics on Gene and on Rutger so that we could
Yeah.
at least record a scratch track, which we would use to do ADR, dialogue replacement,
Yeah.
looping. Um, Afterwards and have to replace their voices because you couldn't record, you could not record sound in there. Well,
No.
so first of all, we had the noise to put up with. So everybody had to, we all looked like we were from outer space. We all had to wear masks with a microphone inside here and headsets so that we could talk to each other because otherwise you couldn't hear one another. The other thing is that the power company said we all had to wear hard hats. So suddenly the crew turns into a sea of yellow hats with masks on our faces. Okay? Nobody can recognize anybody else. There's just a sea of yellow hats and face masks. And um, so the problem was everybody was really upset because nobody could ever find me. You can't just shout,
Yeah.
"Hey Gary, where are you?"
I was just
And
thinking that. Yeah.
if you put it into the microphone, "Hey Gary, where are you?" You go, "Yeah, I'm right here." Nobody knows. And then the sea of yellow hats. So it was a problem. So the prop master says, "I've solved the problem," and he shows up with a hard hat that has runner lights all over it.
Oh,
It looked
geez.
like a Christmas tree on my head. So I have to wear this stupid Christmas tree on my head so people know where I am, and I become the center, and boom, boom. So anyway, so we're shooting these sequences. When we're shooting the action sequences, it's not a problem. But at the end of that sequence where there's those really intimate scenes between Rutger and Jean, uh, and I really needed emotion from both of them in those scenes. We get to shooting that scene, and we're there amid this noise, and I have to stand, like inches away from each of them. They had to put their heads like right next to each other, and I had to stick my mouth right in between so that I could shout into their ears and
Hmm.
doo doo. Anyways, every time we tried to shoot that scene, Rutger would just break into total laughter, and I mean, we'd be in this middle of this like, and suddenly Rutger would just start laughing. And we went take after take, and Rutger just kept breaking up and laughing, and so did
Oh no.
Gene. And I said, "What the fuck is wrong with you guys?" And so finally, I took them out of the tower, and we went outside where we could actually hear each other. And Rutger says to me, "How am I supposed to do a serious scene with you wearing a Christmas tree on your head?"
Hmm.
He said, "Every time I look at you, all I can do is laugh." He said, "When we were doing the action scenes, that was fine." And Gene says, "I have the same problem." So I had to switch out my hat and put on a hat that didn't have the Christmas lights all over it so that
Oh
we
god.
could shoot the scene. We went back in one take, boom, we got it. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
good.
Rutger seemed like an absolute trip to work with. I don't think there will ever be anyone else like him.
No, Rutger demanded perfection of himself and everyone around him. Working with Rutger was probably the most exhausting experience of my career.
Really?
He
Wow.
just, he absolutely demanded perfection,
Hmm.
and he wouldn't accept anything less from you or from himself. And it's that scene where he cries in the car when he's in the car with Robert Guillaume.
Hmm.
Hmm.
He took me aside before we shot that scene. He says, "I'm supposed to cry in this scene." I said, "Yeah." He says, "That's a problem." I said, "Why?" He said, "I've never cried in real life. How do you expect me to cry on
Oh,
camera?"
oh
And he
God.
he wanted me to get into his head and get him into a space where he could cry,
Mm.
and we did. I we were sitting by that chain link fence, and I just got into his head, and I got him to cry, and he, with tears running down his face, he says, "I'm ready to go do the scene." It was amazing, and that scene is amazing.
God.
So
Have you ever seen him in Hobo with a Shotgun?
yeah,
That was a great one.
Oh man.
yeah, but to me, because of who Rutger is, um, I was kind of saddened by that film because
I can see that.
he
Yeah.
should have been doing roles that Laurence Olivier was playing
Yeah.
instead of Hobo with a Shotgun. But
That must have been a super low budget movie too.
it was a super low budget movie.
he probably didn't make much on that at all.
Yeah, the end of his career was not happy.
No.
But in the very least, he left behind an amazing legacy, and nobody's ever.
Oh yeah, I mean, starting with the Verhoeven films that he did in Holland with Soldier of Orange and Turkish Delight, and I mean, he made some unbelievable movies.
Well, even Nighthawks, Blade Runner.
I mean, Blade Runner is the most common talked about, but he's got way more good movies than just that.
Big
Yeah.
time. Even there was a Split Second, which was like it was an interesting one, but yeah. But
yeah, Split Second was a really good. He was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he was amazing, and Hitcher.
The Hitcher, yeah. Don't forget the Hitcher.
Hitcher. He was terrifying in that movie. When the studio was trying to talk me into working with Rutger in Wanted Dead or Alive, the Hitcher had just been shot, wasn't released yet. And they sent me over a print to look at, and I was blown away by it. I was just blown away. I think it's a great film.
Big time, I agree.
And Sin City too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing, Rutger.
Very prolific actor.
Yeah. So we definitely want to know some stuff about Vice Squad.
Love Vice Squad.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Did you have to do a lot of research on the crimes and prostitution that occurred in Los Angeles at the time?
When I was offered, coming out of Dead and Buried, and the trauma that went on at the end of Dead and Buried, and Bob Ramey called me into his office at AFCO Embassy and said, "Okay, you need to just walk away from Dead and Buried and stop all of this. I'm going to offer you another." And he says, "I love Dead and Buried, and I loved your original cut of Dead and Buried. So I'll tell you what, here's a pile of scripts." And he hands me a pile of scripts. He says, "Take these home, read these, pick one. You're going to rewrite it, and you're going to direct it. And I won't change a word, and the studio won't make you do anything that you don't want to do. And Vice Squad will be your movie." It wasn't Vice Squad. He said, "This movie will be your movie, whichever one you choose." I take this pile of scripts home and I read the scripts, and Vice Squad just stuck out for me. The script wasn't very good, the original script, but the idea of it I just found fascinating. And my girlfriend at the time, when we were living together, was an executive at Warner Brothers. And so I gave her the script to read. And she said, "You don't want to do this movie." I said, No. I said, the idea of a film that takes place almost in real time, and the whole film is a chase. Think of it like that. And she said, "Wow, that would really change it completely." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I want to do with it." So I went back in the next morning, and I said to Ramey, "Okay, I want to do this one. But this is what I want to do with it. I want to make it. I want to starts at sunset, ends at sunrise, and the whole movie's a chase. And that's what we should do." And the original film was written by a commander at LAPD who worked in Vice. And it was a lot of the things that happened in the movie actually happened to him in real life, and it was kind of autobiographical. So I met him, and we worked together, and he said to me, I said, "I really love this, but I said, I know nothing about police work." And he says, "Well, why don't you go to the police academy?" So he arranged for me to do a like quick course at the police academy over a few weeks. And that's what I did. In the daytime, I went and took courses at the police academy. And at night, I rode as a second man in a 2-man Vice car for 6 weeks while I was rewriting the script. And that's what we did. So, I did a lot of, I actually got out there on the street, and they would just set me up and give me a badge, and I was actually arresting prostitutes and taking them in the car and talking to them. At one point, they arrested me, and took me into the lockup at Hollywood and
What?
cuffed me to a bench with a whole
What?
bunch of other people who were in there so that I could sit in there and talk to these people as if I was one of them.
Oh, I
my
see.
God.
Okay.
That's wild.
Yeah. So, yeah, on Vice Squad, I did a lot of research.
Oh,
And,
that's the best way to do it.
and that film is really like, cops love that film because it's so real. I mean,
Yeah,
what happens in that film is what really happens. And,
and it still
um,
happens.
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
because it was really intense, especially Nina Blackwood's portrayal as the character of Ginger. I mean, did she have any trouble with having to do her death scene?
no, Nina was great. Nina was an incredible actor. And
She's
I
fantastic.
think we lost a great actor to MTV when she got. It was while we were doing Vice Squad. She said, "I got to fly to New York. I just got an offer on something to become something that they're calling a video DJ."
Hmm.
And I said, "What's that?" And she says, "I don't know. They're setting up this thing called MTV, and they're going to do videos live and stuff on television and a cable network." No,
Yeah.
none of us, I mean, this was a whole new idea. And Nina goes off and she gets cast and she becomes, one of the original uh, VJs on on MTV, which became her career. I mean, I'm sure, Nina's never looked back,
Hmm.
but um, but there was somebody who had an incredible career ahead of her as an actor. She was really good. I mean, when she came in and read for us, because I mean, she wasn't Nina Blackwood. She was just Nina Blackwood. She was an
Yeah. Yeah.
actor named Nina Blackwood. She wasn't, and she just
Hmm.
blew our socks off when she came in and read for that part, and she was great.
Was there any guerrilla style filmmaking involved in the filming?
It was all guerrilla style filmmaking. It was guerrilla style filmmaking, although again, everything was storyboarded, like I always do. I mean, every shot I knew exactly what we were going to do, but we were just out there on the streets of Hollywood,
Hmm.
um, with doing guerrilla filmmaking with John Alcott as the DP after he had just finished another Kubrick film. But Johnny and I had been friends for a long time, and I called him and I said, "Okay, you want to come do a Down and Dirty in Los Angeles?" And he said, "Absolutely." So he was there. So we had one of the world's great DPs doing this kind of sleazy Hollywood movie.
Yeah. One of my favorite guerrilla filmmakers was Larry Cohen.
Yeah,
He,
Larry was great. We lost him last year.
I know, such a
Larry,
bummer.
yeah.
Um, we do filming location videos where we go revisit the filming locations of our favorite movies and stuff. And I was wanting to do this one, and then I found out one of my friends has already done it, and he actually did it for the Blu-ray of Vice Squad, Robert Pattinson.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Or Patterson,
yeah.
yeah.
Vice Squad was shot completely on location.
Yeah.
We did a couple of scenes in the studio, and we shot every day. Call was at sundown, and wrap was at sunrise. So the crew loved doing that, shooting all at night,
Yeah.
and it's all night exteriors, 90% of the film, and we shot every inch of film was shot at night.
It's crazy.
It's crazy to see compared to like back then at the time how much Hollywood Boulevard has drastically changed. It looks nothing like how it did back then. Just when I go back and see all those movies that were filmed on Hollywood Boulevard and even Sunset Boulevard, it blows your mind away at how much it's different now.
I'm just dying to go there and just like line up the shots, though. I want to see what the differences are, you know?
Oh, huge differences, if anything.
It's so fun to do that.
Yeah, it is fun. I mean, it's funny. I just got back, well, before the pandemic. I just got back from London, and
Oh wow.
I was speaking in London, and uh, I was staying in a hotel not far from Russell Square. Actually, the hotel was on Russell Square, but from Russell Square Tube Station. And I
Yeah.
just went over to Russell Square Tube Station and stood every place that I remembered a camera setup
Hmm.
from Deathline, and just looked at how different it is today than it was then. I mean,
Hmm.
no matter where you go, that's what you're going to see. But Hollywood Boulevard's changed a lot. It was pretty sleazy back then.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
big time. Like even all my friends that were around there in the 80s and even the 90s, they've just told me how much it's changed. Like, and it was back then, it was almost like a wasteland.
Well, I
That
mean, it
whole
was
yeah.
crowded 24/7. But, you know, when we were shooting Vice Squad and it was all on location, we did not have one night, not one, in all the time we were shooting, that we weren't interrupted by real police activity.
Oh really?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of shots in the film where a police car goes screaming through in the background, and those were real. I mean,
Wow.
every night there was gunshots and somewhere and police, we were shut down a couple of times. I mean, for minutes because we had so many
Yeah.
real LAPD working on the film with us that we were pretty well protected. Nobody
Hmm.
bothered us. But and because we had so much LAPD of one location, we had one night that there were police everywhere, so we had to move the location, which we did, and we didn't have a permit for the other location, but we had so much LAPD on the show that we didn't have to worry about it.
That whole scene where Ramrod breaks loose from the back seat of the cop car in the handcuffs is very genius. Was
Oh,
that hard to shoot?
thank you. No, it was fun. I mean, again, it was all storyboarded. We knew exactly shot by shot what we had to do.
Yeah.
Um, and the effects guys and the props guys on the show were great, and my transportation, and that car was all cabled up to be able to climb that other car, and then the rollover of the car. The,
Hmm.
the car was all pre-cabled to do all of that. So and all the thing is that today you got CGI and you got remote
Hmm.
cameras that you can look at with video, and but we didn't have that
Hmm.
on Vice Squad. On those car chase scenes, I was in the camera car. I was
Oh.
sitting right there next to the camera while we were doing all of that stuff. We were all strapped in. We had helmets on,
Oh
and
yeah. Safety first.
doo doo. But yeah, that's I. One of the things I'm most proud of, I think, in my whole career is with all the action stuff and all the explosions and all the gun play and everything else in all of my movies. No one has ever even gotten slightly hurt on one of my films.
Wow.
Was the funeral wedding scene in the original script, or was that your idea?
I love that
No,
scene.
that was in the that was from the original script before I even
Wow.
did my rewrite. That was an actual thing. That was an actual pervert that used to exist in Hollywood who had a big mansion in
So
Hancock
weird.
Park and used to have women brought there, and he would do that whole wedding thing. And but
Like,
here's what did change. I had John Alcott, who had just done Barry Lyndon, which was
Yeah.
all lit with candles. There were no electric lights used on Barry Lyndon. So I
Hmm.
said to John, I said, you know what? Let's shoot this marriage scene in the mansion, all with candles. And he said, forget about it. It's too difficult. I said, no, 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 let's do it. And we did it. And that whole scene is lit with no electric light. It's all candles. We
Looks
actually
amazing.
shot that scene by candlelight.
Jeez. Is that hard to do, or I mean, does it take a while to set that up? to
It
make
took a
sure it's
while to
perfect?
set up, but I mean, we had other stuff. We were the props department just really had to work their tail off, and we actually the guys who did the candles on Barry Lyndon, Tony and Joe Teeger, two brothers who were prop guys, um, did Deathline with me, so I knew them, and I knew
Hmm.
them when they were doing Barry Lyndon. So I just put my guys from Vice Squad in touch with them to get some tricks from them on how to light a set with candles.
It was definitely a different movie. Like when I first saw it, I was just like, "This is interesting. I've never seen something like this before." So no, it definitely became a favorite of mine instantly. But yeah, no, I thought you did great on it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's. I think probably Deathline is probably I'm Deathline. Vice Squad is probably my favorite of my movies. Deathline's my firstborn, so it's in my heart. But
So the final product, that's your favorite, Vice Squad?
Vice Squad is absolutely my favorite of my movies. It's an
It's
honesty to Vice Squad and it's my movie.
Yeah.
As much as I love Dead and Buried, there's parts of Dead and Buried that aren't my movie. I was pushed to do them.
Yeah.
Uh, Deathline, is my first film, and it's like it. There's lots I would do differently if I was to do Deathline again. But
Hmm.
Vice Squad, I there's nothing in Vice Squad that I apologize for.
Hmm. Now the film you get bothered with the most, Poltergeist 3. Okay.
Poltergeist 3 was the film that I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
What were you gonna? Did you have a specific question, or you just want me to
We've got a couple, but you,
ramble?
you could say what you were going to say.
When I was offered to do, it was Jay Cantor and Alan Ladd Jr. who were the executive producers
Hmm.
on Deathline, who gave me Deathline, uh,
Yeah.
and they were now the chairman and president of MGM, and so they called me and said, "We want you to do Poltergeist 3," and I said, "Thank you, but no, thank you. I have no
Yeah.
interest whatsoever in doing Poltergeist 3."
Yeah.
For many reasons. I mean, first of all of my films have had a basis in social commentary or political commentary,
Yeah.
and um, and there's no way I can see pushing social or political commentary into Poltergeist 3.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do a sequel. I have no interest in doing a sequel. And they said,
Hmm.
no, 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 we really want you to do this. And I said, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And they just kept coming at me and saying,
Just
we
pushing
gave you
you.
Deathline, you owe us, and we're friends, and da da
Yeah.
da da. And we need it done for a budget, and you know, and we know you can do it. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, two conditions.
Okay.
There were more, but two main
Yeah.
ones. Number one, I shoot it in Chicago in the John Hancock building
That was a condition.
because I grew up watching the John Hancock building being built.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic structure, and I
That's
love
amazing.
architecture, um, and I said I want to do the biggest haunted house that ever existed,
Yeah.
and since it's one of the largest buildings in the world, it would definitely be the largest haunted house. And uh, and two, I want to shoot all the effects practical,
Yep.
no opticals, no CGI, nothing.
And, and in
Every
camera too.
That's what I'm saying, all practical. Every inch of film is going to be camera negative.
Yep.
And they said, Laddie looks at me and says, "Are you fucking crazy?" I said, "Well, you know that already." And he says, "Can you really do it?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I grew up. My first job in the film industry was working in an optical lab where I ran an Oxberry, or I was an assistant on an Oxberry. Eventually, I got to run the Oxberry, and a multi-head, multi-projector camera where you do compositing of interneg and negative and traveling mats, and the way we used to do optical effects analog. And I knew that stuff inside out. And I said, if you can do it post-production, you can do it production. And I know how to do that stuff. I grew up doing that stuff. And they said, okay. And is it going to cost us more or less? I said, it's going to cost you the same, because production will be a little longer, but post-production will be a breeze. And we'll save all that CGI money and optical money and everything else. So they said, okay. And that's what we did. And anyhow, Brian and I wrote the script, and we made the movie. I mean, pre-production went on forever because there was so much work to do in order to do the effects practical. And then Heather died.
Yeah, we lost a great child actor.
Yeah, we had an ending written originally that was going to cost a fortune. The last 17 pages of the script leading into the ending were going to cost more than the rest of the script altogether to shoot. And the boys said to me, isn't there some way we can save some money here? We don't want to spend that money. And so I wrote a different ending that we shot that was done for like a third of the amount of money that the original ending was going to cost. And I didn't like it, and they didn't like it, and nobody liked it. And we finished the film with that ending, and we went out and previewed it, and everybody hated it.
Yeah.
Audiences hated it. I hated it.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, let's go back and shoot your original ending. So we started to get set up to shoot the original ending, and we were in the process of doing that. And Dick Smith and John Caglione and everyone were working on the effects to do the original ending we wanted to do. And I'm in Chicago, and we're getting ready to put all the pre-production together to do this. And I get a telephone call from David Wardlow, who was Heather's agent.
Yeah.
So we need to have a conference call with Jay and Laddie and Dick Berger and you and Barry Bernardi, who was the producer of the film. I said, what's going on? He says, we'll set up the call for later. So we're all, Barry was in Chicago with me, as was Ed Ledding, our production manager. They were all at my apartment in Chicago. And the conference call comes through. We're all on the phone. And David said, Heather died this morning. And Laddie just said, Gary, Barry, get on a plane, fly back here right away. So anyway, so we flew back, and we met in Laddie's office at MGM, and the decision at that point was that we were going to abandon the film.
Yeah.
We didn't want to. Laddie says, I don't want anything to do with a film with a dead 12-year-old in it. And so we decided we were not going to do the film. The next day was Heather's funeral. I was a pallbearer at her funeral, which was like the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely adored that little girl. I loved her. I mean, she was amazing. My girlfriend and I wanted to adopt her.
Yeah.
We used to spend weekends with her. We would take her out to places, and we just loved it. The three of us were like a real team. anyhow, with the funeral came and went, and then I flew back to Chicago because I was in pre-production as well on a television series that I was shooting the pilot in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And or I'd shot the pilot in Chicago, and we were now going to go to series, and the series was going to shoot in Chicago, which was Sable. And I get a call from the studio, and they said, from Dick Berger actually, and Dick says,
Gotta finish the movie.
we have to finish the movie.
Yeah.
And I said, how are we going to finish the movie? I said, we're not going to release the movie with that ending that sucks. He
Yeah.
said, well, come up with a different ending that you can shoot without Heather. And so I did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Body
we,
double.
yeah, we used a double for Heather, and it was awful. And it was just, you know, and none of us gave a shit, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, like the the actor who plays Scott,
Uh-huh.
you know, Donna's boyfriend in the movie, was not available because he was at college, and he was in the middle of finals when we were
Yeah.
shooting this. And we said, well, he's supposed to come back through from the other side with them because he'd been pulled to the other side through the puddle.
Yeah.
And, well, if he's not there, he's not there. He stays on the other side.
Yeah,
Who
right.
cares? So anyways, when they came back without Scott because he
Yeah.
wasn't available for the day that we were shooting this this new ending,
Mm-hmm.
or this substitute ending. And we shot it and recut from what we had and tried to make everything work, and I don't think any of it works. The
Mm-hmm.
last if the last 10 minutes of that film wasn't there, I would be much happier with the film. And
Yeah.
then because of the fact that the original ending was like 17 pages, and
Mm-hmm.
the ending we shot was 4 pages, we were short. And so I had to stretch stuff like that party sequence.
Yeah. No, I read about this.
The party sequence is stretched. A lot of sequences are stretched. There's
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of stuff in the film that wouldn't have been in the film had we shot the ending, because we needed to get the film to 91 minutes.
Yeah.
So I needed to just take whatever we could take.
Mm-hmm.
And we stretched the title sequences a little longer, and whatever we had to tweak, we tweaked
Mm-hmm.
to make the film the delivery length that it had to be. So it's not my favorite film, but I'm very proud
Mm-hmm.
of the special effects.
Just about to say, if without the
Yeah.
special effects, I mean, that's definitely what saves it all, because your use of special effects in there are amazing.
Well, thank you.
Especially practical effects, you know. You can never beat practical effects.
No, practical effects are what horror is all about.
Screw
CGI does not
CGI.
belong in horror.
I
I
hate
agree.
CGI
CGI.
belongs in sci-fi. CGI is sci-fi. Horror is practical effects.
Even practical effects in sci-fi, it makes it so much better, you know?
Yeah.
Well, but in sci-fi it works. I mean,
It does.
you couldn't do Star Wars without CGI.
No.
I would
Yeah.
actually love to see that. That'd be hilarious. It'd be like the best parody ever.
But or any of the Marvel movies, the superhero
Yeah.
movies, they exist, for CGI, or
Mm-hmm.
um, it's lots. But horror films should be practical effects, and in fact, I've been doing a lecture series that I've traveled all over the world doing, where I expose how we did all the effects in Poltergeist 3. It's been really fun.
Have you come to LA to do that yet?
I have never done it in LA.
Ooh, I
I
would
have
love to go
done
to
it.
that.
I probably will at some point when one can
Yeah.
travel again. I had it booked everywhere. I think this period of this beginning of this year, I had 8 venues booked to do the lecture.
No, I
And
got canceled.
yeah, whether you can't travel and you can't put people in.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about doing it online,
You
doing it
should.
as a Zoom
Oh, yeah.
webinar, but it's pretty complicated to set up because
Yeah.
And I like doing it with a live audience. I don't want to
Audience.
record it because
Yeah.
getting the questions are fantastic. So I
Mhm.
would limit the number of people that could come on a Zoom webinar if I do it that way, and I'll do it multiple times.
Yeah.
And but I just did it in Wales at the University of Aberystwyth, the University of Wales, the Aberystwyth
Mhm.
campus, and it was fantastic. 1,700 people in a lecture
Wow.
hall,
What? Wow.
and I'm standing there, and this lecture hall goes on for days in front of me, and it's packed. It was
Mhm.
supposed to be in a 900 seat cinema, and they sold out, and they decided to move it to this lecture hall, and
Wow. Was
it
there a
was
lot of like
pretty
promoting going
fantastic.
on, or did this just kind of just happen?
It was in conjunction with the Abattoir Festival. They have a big horror
Okay, so that helps.
festival in Aberystwyth every year, and so they promoted it through. But it was mainly students at the film school. They they have a great film school at Aberystwyth, and plus they had everybody there for the film festival, so it was
Very cool.
pretty fantastic. And
Wow.
I did it, and we did it for Rue Morgue magazine at the Royal in Toronto, and filled up that theater, which is pretty big. And
Mhm.
and one of the things I was supposed to be doing was we were going to do it at the Music Box in Chicago,
Mhm.
and that's like a 900 or 800 seat theater.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun doing it with a big audience like that, 'cause
No, I can
and
imagine.
I,
That's really cool.
I show clips, and then I got it all on my computer,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
what I was
can
gonna
pull
ask.
everything up, and we can watch scenes over and over again. And then I have all the overheads,
Yeah.
all the storyboards, the script pages, how the script
Oh, that's
pages
so
were
cool.
marked up, and it's all up on the screen so everybody can see everything.
And is this for all your films, or just like a select couple of them?
No, I'm just doing this for Poltergeist, just the
Just
effects of
mainly Poltergeist.
Poltergeist. It's
I
a
see.
it with the Q&A, it's about 2.5 to 3 hours. So
Yeah.
just going through all the effect, I go through every effect in Poltergeist 3.
Speaking of the special effects and all that, what was your favorite special effect to work on in Poltergeist 3?
Um, when Heather's on the bed with the speak and spell, and she gets up, and the camera tracks away from her, and she comes to the window, and suddenly the camera's outside the window, and you see the reflections of the city in the window, and you see her in the mirror, and what's
Mhm.
going on one side is not going on the other. I mean, it is just a combination of doing so many different kinds of effects at the same time to get
Mhm.
that, because where the camera is, the camera should be being reflected in the mirror, and it's not.
Mhm.
And how did you get from a close up of her on the bed to being outside the window and seeing the reflections of the city
Mhm.
behind, in the glass, and you're hanging 80 floors above the world?
Mhm.
uh, Doo-doop. I mean, if we could show the scene, you'd understand what it is more. But I mean,
Mhm.
figuring out how to do that shot was just, and actually, I stole something that I had done in Deathline to be able to do that shot. Um, in Deathline, in the big beginning of the big tracking shot, the 7.5 minute tracking shot in Deathline. Um, I and it does a 360 of the room and then backs out through the door, and we realize that and the camera then comes through the window, the little window in the door, and you're in the other room, because we what we did was we actually carried the door on the dolly in Deathline and did the 360 pan with the door. The lens was sticking through the hole on the door, and then when we
Mhm.
backed out through the door prop guys grabbed the door and held the door in place while the camera pulled through, and you could, see the door and see coming through the door. We did the same thing in Poltergeist. Um, I had the window pressed up against the lens, carried on the dolly as we did the shot back away from Heather. And when we get to the actual where the window is, the window hydraulically was sucked into its position, and then the camera continued back so that we were shooting through the window.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably hard to explain in just words. You have to really see it.
Yes,
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
How did you pull off the crack in the elevator glass?
That was done with hydraulics.
Okay.
There was a set, and the wall was built, and there was a roller on the back of. I keep showing you guys, and I know the audience is only hearing this. There was a roller pressed against the back of the glass, which we could control the pressure to the nth degree. I mean, we had total control over the pressure. And as the roller rolled and we'd increase the pressure on the back of the mirror actually broke. And there was Mylar that had been laminated onto the front of the mirror, clear Mylar, so that the mirror wouldn't shatter and it would only crack.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, and this Cal Acord and his special effects team did an amazing job in creating all of that stuff, all of the hardware that had to be used that would now all be done with CGI.
Mm-hmm. For sure. How was the whole puddle gag done?
We had shot most of it actually on location in a garage with a puddle on the floor. Mm-hmm. Then we built on the stage just the area where the puddle was, a set, and that set was built above a 5,000-gallon tank of water.
Oh, okay.
And which was very, very complicated to do because we needed the light coming up through it. Well, you couldn't put the lights in the water. Yeah. So this tank was built with huge windows, and the windows had glass that was about a foot thick because the pressure from a 5,000-gallon tank is amazing. I mean, pushing out. So we had to build this tank, and we had huge lights outside the tank shooting in through these windows, and inside the tank there were mirrors to put the light where we needed to put the light. And so there were 4 divers inside the tank with scuba gear, adjusting the mirrors and being safety for the actors. So when Heather steps back into the puddle, there was a platform on a hydraulic lift that she stepped into, and then she looks down at her feet, and then we lowered the hydraulic platform, which took her down into the water. And there was the diver down there who had the prosthetics on his hands to look like rotting
creature
flesh.
Yeah.
And but there were 2 other divers there to safety her when she was actually pulled under the water, and put a scuba mask on her so that she could breathe, because she had to stay down underwater while the other 2 actors came into the water, and we had divers down there to safety them as well.
Wow, that's tough.
So it was all done for real. What you see is what you get.
Did any of these effects take like a lot of takes to do?
Oh, they all took a lot of takes to do.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
I mean, the mirror gags were some of the most complicated stuff. And when you have an actor on one side and the double on the other side of the mirror, their movements had to be exact. So we used a metronome, which was played live on the set. So you get this.
Yeah.
And we had a choreographer who worked with us, who worked with the actors. And so the actors had to really pay attention to the metronome, so that it would step, 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 step movement. and we would actually talk to them because in most of those there's no dialogue in most of the complicated mirror scenes, so we wouldn't even shoot sound. And I could actually be talking to the actors and say, okay, 3, 2, 1, step, 3, 2, 1, step, 3, 2, 1, pick up. If they had a prop that they had to pick up, 3, 2, 1, turn. And so, and everything was done to the metronome. So, because a lot of those sets are double sets. There's double sets. There's mirror sets. There's sets with glass. There's sets.
Yeah. No, you do a really great use of mirrors in the whole picture. It's amazing.
Big time.
Thank you.
And you were inspired by Through the Looking Glass, I heard. Was that true?
Yeah. When Brian, when I was offered to do this, and I called Brian and I said, "You want to do Poltergeist 3?" And he had the same reaction I did. He said, "No." And I said, "No, wait,
No.
before you say no, I'm going to do it. We're going to do all the effects practical, so that it's really going to be a magic show. And I want to do the whole thing about mirrors, and it's basically Alice through the Looking Glass. I mean, it's Alice in Wonderland, and instead of there being a rabbit hole, there's going to be a mirror, and people will get sucked through the mirror." And Brian said, "I'm in. Let's do it." So
another really cool effect you did was Carol Ann's bedroom door, where she's like coming through it. What was the material you used for that?
It was latex.
Okay.
It was a latex skin that was painted, and we did so much testing on that, and it was like a big bladder. And then it's funny. Watch Poltergeist 3 again, and you'll just see that there's props in certain places, which you go, why is that there? And then you realize it was like there's a hat hanging on the doorknob in Carol Ann's bedroom.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that hat was hanging on the doorknob was because when it wasn't a mirror and it was just air between double sets, in order to have the doorknob there had to be an armature to the doorknob. So the hat's there to hide the armature. Okay, does that make sense in words?
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Also, when you first see Carol Ann's room, there's that construction paper thing that says Carol Ann's room on the door. Well, the reason that's there was that was the only way that we could hide the hole.
Yeah.
And then she comes busting through that construction paper sign, the evil Carol Ann.
It's still effective though. It worked great.
Yeah, it's and the flooding freezer. We actually built that set so that set could be rotated. So the set was level, and then we could move the set to a 90-degree angle, so that when it was getting filled up and the wall of water was coming towards camera, the set was actually at 90 degrees, and we actually were filling it with water. And then when Tangina comes out of the water, Tangina actually, it's the opposite. She didn't come out of the water. We had her do the scene and then lowered her into the water and shot it backwards. And in order not to ever have to do, well, this is pretty complicated to be able to talk about in words, but when you, most of the time when you shoot backwards, you shoot forwards and then you reverse the film in post-production. But in order to do that, you have to do an optical. You have to create a second generation. And I didn't want any second generation. So we had to turn the camera upside down. In order to shoot backwards, the camera had to be upside down. So it was between shooting into mirrors and shooting upside down and shooting into mirrors and shooting upside down. George Kohut, the camera operator on Poltergeist 3 should have been given an Oscar
Yeah.
for what he did. It was so difficult. And then, when you do a pan and you're looking in a mirror, aside from the fact that it's very disconcerting, you're moving at twice the speed, because when you put the mirror in there, it changes all your distances.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is something that would be easier to draw
If you
you a
had like the
picture
video.
than to talk about it. But it
And
was all very
Julian,
complicated.
yeah, and then Julian Beck had to be recast too because he
Yeah,
passed away.
Julian died before we started shooting,
It's like this
and
film had so much death going on. Even Zelda's mom had to. Zelda's mom died too, right? During the
Zelda's
filming.
mom died while we were in the middle of shooting a scene,
That's
and
crazy.
it was, and I was the one that had to tell Zelda, because I had gotten very close with her. Barry Bernardi came down from the production office and said, "We just got a call that Zelda's mother died."
No.
And Barry looks at me and says, "You're the one that's got to tell her."
Ugh.
And
How'd that go? Jeez.
it was hard. It wasn't
Yeah, I can't
easy.
even imagine. But
So,
talk a little bit about recasting Julian Beck and how that worked out, because I heard that was kind of creepy with the whole death mask thing that he had to wear.
yeah,
The
there
new guy
was a
had to wear.
death mask of him that Dick Smith had to create
It's
prosthetics to
creepy.
put on another face, and we just had to find. And as it happened, there was a man in Chicago
Yeah.
named Nate Davis, who's Andy Davis's father.
Hmm.
Andy Davis, who did The Fugitive and other
Yeah.
movies in The Package. Um, and I'd known Andy forever, and I knew his dad forever. And his dad just had a facial structure that was very close to Julian Beck's. And we brought Nate in. Nate was a wonderful actor. He was basically a Shakespearean actor. Um,
Hmm.
and I had worked with Nate. Actually, I'd shot Nate in two other films before, um, and or two television series that I'd done in Chicago. He was in, and uh, so, anyways, we brought Nate in, and we started with all these prosthetics, all this latex prosthetics that had been basically cast from a. It wasn't really a death mask. It was a mask that had
Hmm.
been done of Julian before he died for a picture, and they needed a
Yeah.
casting of his face, and
Hmm.
so the cast existed, but it was kind of morbid having to do
Still
that.
creepy. Yeah. I can't
So,
imagine that. How did the new guy like wearing that?
well, he had 3 hours of prosthetics to do every morning before he came on the set, so
Yikes.
wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But he knew what he was in for.
And then I heard the building, Hancock building, actually had real temperature issues. Is that a real thing too?
No,
With like the, it's not.
no, I think that was something that
Okay.
somebody made up.
It's
Uh,
because I read something that said at the beginning of the film the characters mistakenly believe that the weather outside is cold. When they descend from the upper floors to the ground level, however, they find that it is quite warm. Hancock Center, due to the building's height, um, has, let me just see, it says residents often call the lobby doormen before leaving their apartments to find out what conditions are like at ground level.
oh, that's
I don't know.
true. That's true.
That's true.
I mean, the build there's no windows that open
Okay.
in the building, and the building is completely temperature controlled. But they weren't having a problem with the temperature. The temperature
Okay.
is always the same inside the building, and the humidity is always the same inside the building. It has its own climate. The building's unbelievable. The Hancock
Yeah, it's
building
amazing.
is just one of the wonders of modern technology and modern architecture.
Yeah.
Um, it was inspired by Mies van der Rohe, and it was built
Hmm.
by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the firm of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and all three of them, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, were all students of
Hmm.
Mies. Mies had nothing to do
Hmm.
with the building, but it was inspired by his architecture. And
Hmm.
the building's amazing. And as it happens, years later, my wife, her father was a structural engineer. And I mean,
Hmm.
well, Janet and I have only been married for like 15 years. So this was well after
Yeah.
Poltergeist 3. But I found out that her father was the structural engineer, one of the
Wow.
structural engineers on the building. He did the whole
That's crazy.
foundation, the building of the caissons that the building floats on.
Well, that's a
So
coincidence.
so I married into the Hancock building.
That's so cool. I didn't even know that.
What was used to make the ice like throughout the
Oh
movie,
yeah, the hand.
especially like the parking garage?
um, Styrofoam and fiberglass,
Mm.
and
Fun.
epoxy resin.
Hmm.
Uh, all of the ice was, I mean, on the swimming pool in the garage. Uh, due
Even
to
when it was covered in the one guy, when he comes out of the water.
uh, the guy coming out of the water, that was latex and epoxy resin,
Okay.
and some goop that they put together, which was the drippy stuff. But basically, he was in a suit that was made of latex and epoxy. And then I
Mhm.
don't remember what the goop was that they threw all over him. That was
Wonder
amazing.
Power.
I mean, what we had to go through to get the Hancock building to let us use the pool was
Yeah.
unbelievable. And then we did this thing on the pool, and the pool had to be closed for like 2 weeks, and then
Oh,
we
that
had to
sucks.
drain the pool and clean the pool and
Oh,
Uh,
refill the pool uh, and it
that's fun.
that's the highest swimming pool, the highest indoor swimming pool in the world, in the Hancock building.
Still, or
Yeah,
at the
still.
time?
No,
Oh, geez.
still indoor. There's outdoor
How high
pools
up
that
is
are
that? Is that
higher.
like all the way towards the top?
It's at 60 60th floor, I believe,
Oh,
the
geez.
wow.
pool.
That's pretty high.
I think. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly,
Wow.
but I'm pretty sure it's like 60 stories. So it's
And I
pretty
also,
amazing to sit in that swimming pool in the health club that's up there on that floor and look
yeah.
out over the city.
Did any of you guys and the crew members go swimming at all?
All the stunt guys were in the pool. I didn't really have time to go swimming.
Yeah, sadly.
But I'll tell
I
you what we
actually,
did do. Here's It was funny. Tom Skerritt used to call it the Poltergeist Olympics. He said every day
uh-huh.
we had an event that we had to do, and he just would come to me in the morning and say, "What event we doing today?" Well, when we were shooting up on the roof, and Chicago
Okay.
is the windy city, right? And it's
Okay.
always windy. And when you're up
Uh-huh.
on the roof of the Hancock building, believe me, it is windy up there. And no
Mhm.
matter how warm it was downstairs, it's always chilly up there on the roof because you're
Mhm.
so high up. And it was always, and the wind was always blowing. And the roof of that building's like a square city block. I mean, it's
Mhm.
huge when you're up there on the roof. And what we used to do is we would all be wearing parkas,
Mhm.
and we would stand, and everybody would stand around so that everybody was safetied, and people would face into the wind and then jump up in the air and open their parkas, and they'd get caught by the wind and they'd get blown like 15 feet.
Oh
And
God.
there we were, quarter of a mile above the earth, and people were
Jeez.
flying. But we had people around to safety everybody, so no one went over the edge.
Yeah.
If the Hancock building knew we were doing that, they probably would have thrown us out of there.
Yeah, I was about to say nobody really. I read something somewhere that a lot of people didn't even know the movie was being filmed there.
No, we
Like a lot of
we
the residents
we had to be
planned for that.
pretty. We the sky lobby we built. We didn't actually
Hmm.
shoot that in the building. All the hallways and everything we built. We we built two floors of the Hancock building plus the sky lobby on a stage.
Hmm.
And the stuff that was actually shot and all the stairways were built on the stage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the lobby sequence was actually shot in the building next door, which had a lobby
Mm-hmm.
that looked like the Hancock, but the Hancock didn't work for us. I wanted all the escalators, and so the water
Mm-hmm.
tower had better escalators, so we shot that there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we shot exterior of the actual Hancock building. We shot on the roof of the Hancock building. We shot in the restaurant that at the top of the Hancock building. We shot on the window washing rig
Yeah.
at the Hancock Center, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, but that was about it. Everything we shot was from like the 95th floor up
Mm-hmm.
inside the building, and we shot outside the building. The garage was in a different place. We built all the elevators. We built all the banks of elevators. So all
Mm-hmm.
of that was shot in the studio.
Did anybody on the crew have a fear of heights?
Oh yeah, there were people who would not shoot on the roof. We had to
Oh,
replace some
geez.
people, and there were people who actually our focus puller, um, a first assistant cameraman, had a fear of
Mm-hmm.
heights and would not go up on the roof. Um, and then and Tom Skerritt, when I told him that he had to ride on the window washing rig, he said,
Oh God.
"Okay, but I got to tell you, where's camera going to be?" Yeah, showed him where
Yeah.
camera going to be. He said, "You will be as close to me as you can be, and be off camera." He said, "Because I'm not riding on that thing if you're not standing right next to me." So
Yeah.
every shot of Tom on that window washing rig, I am just off camera.
Oh wow.
He was not happy.
That's
I
terrifying.
think Nancy had less of a fear of heights than Tom, but they were both pretty nervous out there. And then, we had a whole crew, and everybody had to be strapped on, and every piece of equipment we
Mm-hmm.
put onto the window washing rig had to be tethered
Mm-hmm.
so that nothing could fall off. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you drop something off, you drop a
A penny can
quarter
kill
off of
somebody.
that thing when
Yeah.
you're up at the top, it'll go through the sidewalk when it hits.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the
That's scary.
velocity is unbelievable. So anything that's dropped off of there is going to have the acceleration of a bullet by the time it gets to the ground.
Mm-hmm. Were you a big fan of Nancy Allen when you had her on there?
Yeah, I mean, I like Nancy, and there were some problems. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, Nancy's been great in a lot of things, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, she and Brian were going through their divorce while we
Ugh.
were shooting Poltergeist, so she wasn't exactly a happy camper, and she and Tom did not get on very well.
Really?
Yeah. Well, Tom has a habit. When Tom is doing something very seriously, when you say cut, he always makes a joke just to break the tension so he can walk off the set.
Yeah.
And Nancy kept feeling like the jokes were aimed at her.
Oh,
And
really?
so at the beginning she got really upset with it, and it was hard to break her of that belief
Oh, wow.
that it wasn't being aimed at her.
Did Nancy work on RoboCop before Poltergeist 3, or was that after?
That was before,
Before?
wasn't it?
She had just finished it?
I can't remember.
I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, because I know it was released the same year. It was released in '88.
Hmm. There were a lot of good movies that year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think she did RoboCop with Verhoeven. I think she did that before we did Poltergeist 3.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive.
We got some fan questions for you if you're able to answer some of these.
Okay.
Peter Vulo asks, ask him if he has any updates regarding the restoration of Dead and Buried and if he can give us any specifics about the Blu-ray.
Um, I wish I had better news about the restoration of
Yeah.
Technicolor. which was bought by some Japanese company, has a warehouse in Camarillo. And somewhere in that warehouse is the original negative of Dead and Buried.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought we had it. We had a box that was marked Dead and Buried, original negative. When we
But it wasn't there.
pulled it out, it wasn't Dead and Buried's negative. We know that the negative is there. We are trying to find it.
Mm-hmm.
We have the rights to it, or Bill Lustig does for Blue Underground. And someday we will find it, and someday we will do it. I mean, it's funny. We've shot all the extras already. We thought we had the negative, and then it ended up that it wasn't the negative. We actually found what was marked as the negative, sent it to London to have it scanned on the Aeroflex scanner in London, which is the best scanner in the world, and realized that it was an interneg, and it was a bad interneg, and but the negative is somewhere, the cut negative, and we will find it eventually, and there will be a Blu-ray of Dead and Buried, which will look as good as the Blu-ray of Deathline.
Yeah. All right. Our friend Stephen Emery, and he's actually a really big Poltergeist fan. He loves Poltergeist 3 too. He said it would be cool to hear him talk about the filming of the trailer where they used that helicopter shot to fly up to the building, and whether Heather filmed a scene of her saying, "Guess who's back in town?" The publicity still would seem to indicate this.
Yeah, well, they shot that. They brought in a company that did that helicopter thing that flew through. That was done while we were in pre-production. I didn't have anything to do with it other than approving what was being done, and they did shoot Heather. I didn't do it, but that was all done by a company that does trailers and publicity stuff.
He said, also ask if he's still making the documentary on Poltergeist 3.
Well, it's not a documentary. I am gonna, I've been doing this lecture series, and I eventually will. Some people have talked to me about putting the lecture series on a Blu-ray, which we will do eventually when I'm tired of doing it live, I guess.
Yeah. Or you could just film the live one and just release it.
That's what we're gonna do, basically.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas for a Poltergeist 4? He also wants to know.
No.
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 That's not surprising.
You're done. At this point in my life, anything else that I do, I realize is going to be part of my legacy, because whatever I do next is probably going to be the last thing that I do. I mean, I'm going to be 75 in August, and I'm very healthy for 75, and I'm in great shape.
Yes,
and,
you look like it.
And actually, under this hat, I have a full head of hair, so I got more hair than either of you guys, actually, and a lot of it.
I need a haircut.
Me too. Well, during the pandemic, look at my beard is coming in really good during my pandemic
I'm growing out
beard.
my beard until the pandemic is done.
Me too. I haven't trimmed it. I usually just have stubble, but because I don't like to shave, so I just trim with a clipper, but I'm just letting it grow. I am thinking there's a few projects that I'm thinking about doing. There's a couple of projects I'm thinking about producing, and one project that I'm thinking about getting very involved in. One project was all set to go before the pandemic hit, and we got.
Damn it.
We don't know if it's going to get resurrected or not. So, boo-boo.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that I don't have a crystal ball, I don't really want to talk about any of those. But whatever projects I do between now and when I just hang up hang up the hat for good.
Yeah.
I'm taking very seriously.
Well, whatever you do next, you have our support.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And then Steven also wants to know, what was his idea for Poltergeist 2 when he was offered, or was it the same script?
They offered me the script, and I turned it
Okay.
down.
You were like, I'm not doing that. All right. And then did you keep anything from the set of Poltergeist 3?
Yeah, I have a bunch of reverse stuff. Oh, I should have. Oh, we're not visual, so it didn't matter. I have my when we shot the show. We did a lot of stuff that we shot into a mirror, so that the
Mm-hmm.
mirror was at a 45-degree angle to the camera, and so everything we shot was reversed.
Yeah.
Because we wanted it to be reversed, and so when we put up the slate board would be reversed. So we didn't want when the dailies went to the studio for them to see the dailies every day. We didn't want them to know what was shot in the mirror and what wasn't. So we did a reverse slate. We had a slate that was backwards. All the lettering was backwards. We'd write on the slate backwards and do all the identification. Everything was written backwards. And I have the slates. I still have the slates,
so
the
cool.
forward slate and the backward slate. I think I put it up on my Facebook page one day. If you go to my Facebook page, you can probably find a picture of it.
Yeah.
And then I have the cups with Freud's picture on it from Dr. Seaton's office, the cup that went through the window, because the cups, we had to have cups with right hand and left hand handles so that they were mirror images of each other. I have a whole bunch of mirror image stuff that I kept from memorabilia that I kept from because everything had to be made. Everything that was in Carol Ann's room, we had to have a reverse of. And everything that was in Dr. Seaton's office, we had to have a reverse of.
Did anybody keep that torn apart Carol Ann's bedroom door sign?
God, I don't know.
That would have been a cool thing to keep.
Yeah, Cal probably has some of that stuff, or had some of it. Cal's gone too.
Yeah. And then the last thing Steven wanted to know was, will you ever do a convention?
I do film festivals. But actually, somebody had called me and asked me to agent me for conventions, and I said, but this was just before, again, the pandemic. And Bill Lustig has been trying to talk, because Bill does conventions, so he wanted me to start doing conventions with him. And I thought,
I think you should. You'd make a killing at them.
Yeah, well, they're not going to be any for a while.
Not for a while, but when they do.
Yeah.
And we know a guy, Sean Clark. I don't know. You probably know who that is because he was in Cursed Films with you on the Poltergeist episode. He has like 300 clients that do conventions.
Oh, yeah? Tell him to call me.
So, yeah. Yeah, I will.
You know how to get to me. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I guess after the pandemic's done, I would do conventions.
That'd be fun. It'd be great to see you too.
Absolutely.
And then Jeremy Moorhead wants to know, what's a gag or FX on Poltergeist 3 that wasn't filmed that you wish you could have filmed?
The ending.
Yeah.
We were going to morph Carol Ann into Tangina and Tangina into Carol Ann. And all of that was going to be done practically. And it was really complicated. And I don't know if have either of you guys ever seen the commercial that Gene Simmons and I did for Rock Against Drugs for MTV?
I never did. I'm actually surprised, me being a huge Kiss fan, but now I'm going to have to look that up.
Look it up on, it's on YouTube. And you can look it up. And Gene comes out like a monster staring into the camera. Yeah. And he's all made up. Rick Baker did the makeup. And I've been so lucky. I work with the best. I've worked with Dick Smith, with Stan Winston, with Rick Baker, all the best special effects guys ever. makeup effects.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Gene comes out like a ghoul, like a monster, and it glares into camera and says, uh, "Drugs are great. Drugs make you cool. Drugs, And then suddenly he sinks his fingers into his face and rips his face apart and pulls this thing, and a perfectly made up Gene Simmons is underneath this makeup. It's all done in one shot.
Yeah, we're actually watching it right now. He pulled it up.
Yeah.
I had to check this out for myself, but
That's
yeah,
funny.
I'm looking at that. That actually looked
That's amazing.
great.
Rad.
Yeah, rad.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it was gonna basically the same way that we did that. We are gonna do these transitions from a Carol Ann face with the fingers going into it and ripping it off, and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
Tangina, and then Tangina putting her hands in it, and it becomes Carol Ann. So Carol Ann was going to be made up to be Tangina, and Tangina was going to be made up to be Carol Ann, and
Oh, that would
and
be so
rip their
cool.
faces off as they come through the mirror. And
Yeah.
that whole transition of that happening was what I based the whole ending of the film on, and which I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry that we never got to shoot, because it would have been very emotional
Mm-hmm.
as they traded places. Tangina basically sacrifices herself for Carol Ann, and Carol Ann is able to
Mm-hmm.
come through the mirror. And
Mm-hmm.
as they come through the mirror, they morph from one to the other.
That's a great idea.
That was an effect I would have loved to have done.
Either way, I think Heather O'Rourke would definitely be proud.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
thank you.
I
I,
mean,
I love her.
mm-hmm.
She was one of my favorite human beings. I tell you
Mm-hmm.
a quick Heather O'Rourke story. We had.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm sure you've read about the explosion that we had on the set when we were shooting the Fireball down in the garage, and it got completely out of control, and the garage burned. We did about $250,000 worth of damage to the building,
Oh, damn. I didn't even hear
Wow.
about that.
and it was all over the news the next day. Everybody on every news program was carrying this explosion and this fire, and it actually wasn't our
Oh,
fault. It's a long story. That's irrelevant.
yeah.
The next morning, Heather comes running into my office. She comes running up to me and said, Gary, I saw all that about the explosion on the news this morning. That was awful. And I said, yeah. She said, did anyone get hurt? And I said, no, thanks, Heather. Nobody got hurt. It was all
Uh,
fine. She said, oh, that's good. And then she looks at me and says, did you get the shot?
oh, oh my God.
That's what a pro she was. Did you get the shot?
Yeah, she was beyond her years for
Yeah.
sure.
So,
We got one more from Jeremy. He said, Lisa thoroughly creeped me out as a 9-year-old kid. It was hard for my kid mind to process Stacy Keenan, who was the star of My Two Dads and Step by Step, two wholesome shows, as a victim of a psycho stalker. How was it working with such a young TV star on that film?
it was great. Stacy Keenan was fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
I loved working with her, and the young actress that played her best friend. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we had so much fun making that film. That film was really a fun film to make, and my daughter, um, when I made that film, my daughter always complained. Her mother and I had been separated for a long time, but her mother wouldn't let
Mm-hmm.
her watch any of my films because all of my films were R-rated,
Yeah.
and she was a little girl, and so, anyways, I wrote that script for my daughter. I, I wanted to write something for her, and so I wrote this teenage thriller, which was PG, and I wrote the script for her. And and then when Poltergeist went through what it went through, Dick Berger, as a thank you for me coming back and finishing Poltergeist, which I didn't want to do, but I agreed to do it, said, bring me a script, any script you want to make, and MGM will make the script. And I said, well, I just wrote this script for my daughter. And, and I gave him the script to Lisa. And he said, I would have made this film if I didn't owe you a favor. He said, this is a great script,
Yeah.
so let's make it. And unfortunately, we ended up making it with MGM, which was unfortunate because MGM went into bankruptcy while we were making the movie.
Oh,
And
really?
it never
I didn't
really
know
got
about that.
released. It went straight to television.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That sucks.
which was why I decided to retire.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a
I,
couple hard hits in a row.
I did one film where my star died, and my next
Yeah.
film the studio died, and I just said, you know what, television is a much better place to be. And since then, that's all I've done is television.
Well, at the end of the day, your whole career is amazing. We love all your work. There really isn't a film out there that we don't enjoy to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, you've gotten to work with some amazing people over the years, too.
I have
Yeah.
worked with some really amazing people. I have been so lucky to work with Donald Pleasence, with Christopher Lee, with, I mean, just, Norman Rossington, Clive Swift. I mean, just amazing people. I mean, Clive Swift had just finished a Hitchcock picture when he did Deathline with me. And then, Robert Englund and John Forsyth. And it just goes on. And then in television, working with Daniel J. Travanti. I mean, Missing Persons, which I did with Daniel, was the only series he did after. He didn't want to do another series after Hill Street Blues. He did Hill Street Blues for 8 years. And he just said, that's enough. I don't have to do any more series. And then when I brought him the pilot script of Missing Persons, he said, how could you do this to me? You brought me a script I want to do. and we did it. And working with Daniel was just amazing. He and I are still friends. He actually, when I brought him to, I wanted to do Missing Persons in Chicago, so we shot the show in Chicago. And Daniel just fell in love with Chicago when he was here and decided to buy a house here. So he bought an estate up in Lake Forest, which is a suburb just north of Chicago. And he lives here. And then I moved back here, and so we still see each other quite a bit. And my wife loves his gardens. His gardens go on forever on his house, and he's really into his gardens. And we're probably going to go up there actually in the next few days. We'll social distance, and see how the garden's coming this spring. So
yeah, social distancing is nuts. They actually just opened the trails in LA today, but they're requiring everybody wear a face mask.
Yeah, well, I don't go out without a mask on. And
that's rough.
Anyway, I mean, and then as far as, like I mentioned, I've worked with Stan Winston, with Rick Baker, with Dick Smith, the best. Cameraman, I've worked with Alex Thompson, John Alcott, Alex Nepomniachtchi. I mean, Fred Schuler. I've just gotten to work with some of the most amazing human beings. And, it's been very lucky.
My acting coach actually got to work with Rick Baker on her first film, which was a film called Schlock.
I
don't know if you know about Schlock.
Yeah.
My Eliza Garrett, she's Eliza Roberts now, but yeah, she got to work with him on that, and he did. I think that was one of his first films as well.
All I gotta say is, wow, like we definitely got a lot of amazing questions answered, and we definitely got more than what we expected, which is great.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. This was fun. And it was nice. Yeah, it's always nice being interviewed by somebody that knows what they're, that's done their homework. Yeah. So you guys have asked some really interesting questions. And
yeah, I didn't want to just talk about Poltergeist or specific, one film kind of thing.
Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys, and good luck to you, and hope all goes well.
Stay safe.
All right.
Hope to see you around after all this.
Absolutely.
Be good.
We're going to close this on some Neon Slime.
Oh, yeah.
taste